pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thanks. The purpose of this meeting tonight is to discuss a local law deleting Section 125-63 of the Town Code entitled Affordable Housing and replacing it with a new section of the same relating to affordable housing. We specifically are going to have a brief presentation from Patterns of Progress tonight, just an overview of the presentation that Patterns for Progress has given the Affordable Housing Open Space or Open Space Affordable Housing Committee. And the other purpose is to address the comments that the Planning Board gave the town on this proposed law, and I think specifically 6 major ones. And I will also mention that, well, I'll save that to the end. So that's what we're doing. Do we have a presentation?
Hello.
Hi.
How's everybody tonight?
Good. Hungry.
What's that?
Yes.
He's
What do you
hungry.
want to get, the early
Thank
bird
you.
special?
Did I hear somebody say hungry?
Yeah.
Hi, everybody.
Hi.
This is Joe Chaika, and I am from Hudson Valley Pattern for Progress. I don't know if this is on or not.
Is the microphone?
If I even need it. Everybody-
Speak a little more directly into it.
Used to DJ weddings a long time ago. All right, so I'm going to go through what I handed out to everybody. It's a series of about 15 or 16 slides. And I don't want to get stuck in the weeds because as you may or may not have gone through the entire report, it's about 100 pages. There's a lot of detail. And so I tried to pull some of the highlights out, and we'll just go through it real quick. So, background. As everybody knows in the room, Rhinebeck, small rural town in northern Dutchess County. It's got a small village right at the center of town. It's got a very successful Main Street. I think there's a lot of communities throughout the Hudson Valley that would actually die for your Main Street. It's very beautiful and attractive place to be. The purpose of the study were those couple of points that I put there. The purpose is to provide demographic profile and analysis of the existing rental housing market, the existing homeownership market conditions, profile of local wages, the housing gap analysis, cost burden analysis, and then come up with some recommendations. So as I go through the facts and figures, I'm going to try really hard to provide the data in terms of the county, in terms of the town, the village, and in terms of the town outside of the village. Some data points you can separate the town from outside of the village, others you cannot. The full study, again, I said, is about 100 pages or so. There's a lot of data, a lot of stats, a lot of charts, but I want to hit the highlights. So if we look at the second slide on your handout, demographics, Dutchess County-wide. You saw a steady growth from 1940s through about 1980. Population growth rate declined since 2000. The ACS, which stands for American Community Survey, 2015 data shows a decline of about 500 persons since 2000. Currently, your county-wide population is about 297,000 people. Cornell University has a program, it's called the Program for Applied Demographics. And they do projections by different age cohorts. Their projections by 2040 for the county of Dutchess shows the main 3 points that I want to show. The age cohort of 20 to 34, which is the generation known as the millennials. They show some growth there by 2040 of about 10%. Age cohorts of 65 to 84 and 85 and above show a majority of the growth, and that is the same growth rates. It's actually smaller than some of the surrounding counties in the Hudson Valley. So I want to show these because it's an important fact and it's an important projection to understand where your population is going, both the young population and the old population. The 10% growth rate that they're projecting for the 20 to 34-year-olds is actually opposite of many counties. So Dutchess County is a little bit ahead of the curve, if you will, in retaining millennials. And that could very well be because of the position that you have geographically on the right side of the river. You're on the right side of with the train. On the other side, not so much. People can't get into the city as easily. The school enrollment county-wide is declining. It is projected to continue to decline, about 6,700 kids less than in 2004. So over the last 13 years, we've seen about a 6.7% decline. Median income is about $72,500 countywide. And that's about it for that page. So let's turn the page and we can go on to the demographics for the Rhinebeck highlights. The town outside of the village has shown a steady growth. It's about 4.4% over the last 10 years. So if you look at that and say, well, that's not too bad, just under 5% growth. You have to realize it is over a 10-year period, so it's only about 0.5% per year. So it's very slow and almost stagnant growth. The village has actually declined in population over the same time period, and it's dropped about 13.6%. School enrollment, again, it has declined in the county and it has declined, obviously, in Rhinebeck. From 2000 to 2014, total decline about 15%, and Cornell, again, is projecting an additional decline of about 9% through 2023. The surrounding towns and villages, they've also all declined in population. Next slide is demographics by age cohort, and you'll see that the town and village has declined for ages 0 to 54. The town outside of the village is growing in 55 and over. Both the town and village is growing 55 to 64, and the village is actually showing a small decline in 65 and above. The Hispanic population is one to note. In almost every single community throughout the Hudson Valley, we're seeing tremendous growth in the Hispanic population, and here in town, we see it at about 26.5%. Household and family size has declined. That follows the national trend. Essentially, people are having less kids. Years ago, it was 2.5 kids per household. Right now, we're looking at, on a national level, probably about 1.9, 1.8. And so this area of the state is no different. Home ownership and rental vacancy rates, they've increased, but they remain under 5%. Under 5% is typically indicative of a tight housing market. So that's where you'll see prices start to go up, sometimes artificially, sometimes it's just because demand is so high. The value doesn't necessarily translate into a higher number, but most often it does. Home ownership rate has increased in the town, but it's declined in the village. The national trend for home ownership rates right now, it's declining. It's at a national level, it's probably about 63%. It used to be about 70%, 71%. And essentially, on a national level and local level, we're becoming what we call a renter nation. More people renting than buying homes. And that has a lot to do with job security and the fact that the people that are in the job market between 25 and 54 move around a lot. Next slide shows your aging housing stock. So the village has a housing stock of about 38% built before 1939. The town, 27%. Town outside of the village has about 27% of its housing stock built before 1939. And you can see the stats for the buildings that are over 50 years old. And I bring that up for two reasons. First of all, lead-based paint is an issue in your older housing stock, must be addressed in a very delicate manner, so to speak. There are a lot of rules and regulations about removal of lead-based paint. And also, homes that are over 50 years old, they typically require major rehabilitation, which is a cost. So if you've got a population that is aging, you've got an aging set of housing stock, then you are potentially looking at a point where the residents who are 65 and over would need potentially grants, low-interest loans to help them through the housing issues that they have as they age in place. And if you look at the full study, you'll see some recommendations based on those two facts there. Poverty. Well, if we look at poverty in this part of Dutchess County, it's very low. It has, in the town has actually declined from 9.7% to 6.7%. The village poverty rate has actually grown, though. It's very interesting. It's gone from 9.2 to 12.3. And the surrounding community poverty rates have also grown, except for Milan, which actually dropped from 4.6 to 2.9. So it just puts it a little bit into perspective. And as you read through the detailed report, you'll see that I showed a lot of charts with surrounding communities, and that just helps give you sort of a litmus test of what else is going on in Red Hook, in the town, in the village there, in Tivoli, so on and so forth. The next slide is about median household income. And so the income has actually declined in many, many communities throughout the Hudson Valley when you adjust it for inflation. So the current median in the town is about 65.7, but if you did an inflation adjustment, it should actually be 72,000 and change. And the same thing in the village. There's 47.5 is the median, but when you adjust for inflation, it should be about $57,200. Now, when you talk about...
Explain that better, sorry.
Sure. So in 2000, let's assume you're earning $10,000 in 2000. When you adjust that for inflation, by 2014, it should be, say, $17,000.
Okay.
But the median income shows up as only, say, $15,000.
Okay.
It means wages are not keeping up
Right.
with inflation.
Okay. Thank you.
And inflation is
So
quick.
the housing product, the cost of living and housing costs have stayed level with the inflation rate, is that what you're saying?
No. Cost of living has gone up a lot more than wages in many, many communities. Some
The
communities...
relevance is we're comparing that inadequate increase in income to the increase in cost. Okay.
Yes. Now, median income is defined by lots of different sources. The American Community Survey, the census, which is essentially one and the same, but it's also defined by HUD, Housing and Urban Development at the federal level. And in Dutchess County, the HUD median income for a family of four is $87,100, and that was at the time of the study. The most recent report that just came out from HUD for FY 2017, the median income is $89,400, and again, that's for a household of four persons. Industry, jobs, and median earnings. So if you look through all of the NAICS codes, which are codes that identify specific categories of industry, in Rhinebeck, 36% of the jobs that people are employed in are in the educational services and healthcare, with a median income of about $42,000. 12.4% arts, entertainment, food services, $39,000. 11% are professional management, again about $42,800. 10.5% retail trade, $24,300. And that retail trade represents your clerks that are working on the Main Street, the clerks that are working in in the big box stores. The overall median for the county as of 2014, again, this data was from last year, is $42,000. Total jobs in Rhinebeck, according to the ACS 2014, was about 3,479 jobs, of which 2,383 were full-time and 1,096 are part-time.
Are the full-time jobs with benefits?
Full-time? Sometimes they are, sometimes they're not. It doesn't break down the benefit analysis on this.
And this is per person, not a family of four.
Correct. Correct. So if you see that and you say, okay, so educational services, the median is 42. So if there's two people, it's 84,000. And if you look at the HUD median income, it's about 85,000, 87,000. So it does line up.
So 4 people, a couple and 2 kids.
The 2 kids.
Are still 84 now.
Correct. It's not 4 earners. It's two earners and
Sometimes
2 kids.
one.
Sometimes one, absolutely. Next slide shows home ownership, affordability of home ownership. So with standard underwriting and again, this is a snapshot in time, and this snapshot was taken at the end of calendar year 2016, essentially between September and December. The going rate at that time was about 3.5% for a 30-year fixed rate mortgage. Right now, it's about 4.2%. We estimated a down payment of about 5%. That's typically as little as you can put down to purchase a home. Front-end ratio is 28%, which means that your monthly housing debt can't be more than 28% of your monthly take-home. I'm sorry, your monthly gross income. And the back-end ratio is 43%, which accounts for all other debts, like a car loan, a personal loan, and another big whammy that is really killing the homeownership industry is student debt.
So when they talk about the 30%, it's always gross, not net.
It's gross,
Okay.
correct.
Okay.
But when running a family household budget, I've always looked at what's in the wallet, not necessarily what's on the paycheck. So, the other debt, we have averaged throughout the county in talking with bankers and realtors and homeownership counselors, believe it or not, the other monthly debt is typically about $875 per month. The average student debt is somewhere between $400 and $500 a month. Car loans, $350, $400, personal loans, credit card debt, all of those recurring debts. The average, again, is about $875. The town tax, $21 per thousand of value. The village tax was $24 per thousand in value.
Those mill rates aren't correct.
The town tax rates, they come right out of the books.
Our mill rate is $1.90 per thousand, and the village is $4.50, $4.33.
These are special districts, county, town, for the town, and then for the village, it would be village and the county and special
And town
districts.
outside.
And outside, correct. So when it's all said and done, last September, we took a look at the market here. The median home price for a home in the town was about $416,000. Income needed to purchase that home is about $125,000 a year. And again, your median income is $65,700. In the village, the median price was $563,000. Income needed, $175,000. The median income inside the village for a resident is about $47,500. There were 3 homes available at the time of the study that were affordable in the town. So that means there was very little opportunity and choice for affordable homeownership at the town level and or the village level. And when we ran the numbers for the village, there were none available for that median income. So what does that equate to? It equates to something called a cost burden for owners. So if you look at the very next chart, we talk about owner cost burden. A cost burden is when you pay more than 30% of your gross income toward housing, whether it's rent or whether it is what's called PITI, your principal, interest, taxes, and insurance, if you own a home. If it's over 30, you're in an unaffordable situation. When you're over 50%, you're severely cost burdened. at all income levels, and the report goes into much detail about this, at all income levels in the town of Rhinebeck, we see about 810 owners that are cost burdened. And clearly, as you go down in the income levels, there's a higher cost burden. If you look at the full report, you'll find all of the surrounding municipalities, and I also included the town of Ulster and the city of Kingston in the cost burden analysis to show that you're not alone. This is occurring everywhere. So this 30% rule, it's a HUD rule. It was defined a long time ago, and there's been a lot of talk about bumping that rule up because almost nobody lives under that 30% rule. The fair market rent in Dutchess County is about $1,270 for a two-bedroom apartment. That again is published by HUD on an annual basis. The hourly wage needed to afford that is $24.44. The mean renter's wage rate at the county level is less than half. It's $9.65. What does that mean? There's a gap of about $770 per month for the renter, for the mean renter wage rate as compared to what the fair market rent is for an apartment.
So wait, you need a $24 an hour wage to afford
A two-bedroom apartment?
for $12.71, which there aren't any in Rhinebeck.
No. Well, there's a couple, but they're really small if you can find those.
Two people need $24 an hour, is two bedrooms, just for one?
The number of people that live there is irrelevant.
Okay.
It's the number of wage earners.
Okay.
So if you have two store clerks, each earning $13 an hour, then they can afford a two-bedroom apartment.
A
If you
husband and
own-
wife making $13 an hour would be able to afford to live here, but less than that.
If they could find a $1,200 a month apartment,
Yeah.
Correct.
which they can't.
With heat, hot water, electric, all in. The Section 8 waiting list. So Section 8, a lot of people have,
You said heat, hot water, electric, so that 28% has to include heat, hot
the
water?
30%, no.
38?
The fair market rent
Yeah.
does not include heat, hot water, and electric.
Okay.
Like if you're a homeowner and you go to the bank, or if you want to buy a house, you go to the bank and they say, okay, 28% of your gross income can be used towards housing debt, they don't count your utilities.
Okay.
So the 1270 does not include hot water.
Or electric or whatever. Section 8. So Section 8 has a lot of negative connotations. Section 8 was a program actually started in 1974, I believe, as a program called Operation Bootstraps. And it was a program that gave assistance for up to 2 years for family who was falling on hard times. It was a rental assistance program. The program is still alive and still around. It's called the Housing Choice Voucher Program now. It has morphed into something that was not imagined. Once you get a Section 8 housing voucher certificate, you can stay on it for however long you want, as long as your income qualified. So there's some issues with the program. But I give you the history because I just want everybody to know when some people say, oh, those are Section 8 people, it's really not a good description. It's a Section 8 program. The people that are on it are primarily very low-income families. And if you look here in Dutchess County, the waiting list just to get on the program is over 1,000 people.
What does that mean in terms of turnaround? How long does it take to get on?
5 years.
So there is no help for you if you're in if you're in trouble.
In the Rhinebeck area, there's about 54 families on the waiting list.
54 families in Rhinebeck?
Yeah.
54 families is a pretty
The greater
sizable chunk of our
Rhinebeck area.
population.
It is. And that feeds into the first recommendation, which is build affordable housing, probably about 40 to 60 units. That's part of the equation. So,
54 families.
are on the waiting list. That does not necessarily count the people that are on the waiting list for affordable housing complexes that have been built here in the village, the Section 202 project, over on the other side of the light, and up in Red Hook, there was I think a two-phase project that was built. They all have waiting lists as well.
What do you mean on the other side of the light? Are you talking?
Wells
Manor.
Most matter. The house
Have these numbers increased since we've had our recession over the last few years? I mean, what were they?
In 2006.
7 years ago?
Yeah, I don't have that answer. I don't know if we can actually get a Section 8 waiting list from 2006. But there's another slide in here we'll sort of, I think it'll get to the gist of what you're asking. Housing affordability for renters, the cost burden for renters. It's essentially as bad as it is for homeowners. So all income levels, town of Rhinebeck, you're looking at 430 renters that are cost burdened. 245 of those are severely cost burdened. That means they pay more than 50% of their gross income towards rent. That excludes one other important item, getting to work. When you include transportation costs, you're adding another probably 17 to 22% of the gross.
Does this look at healthcare costs as well?
That's not in.
So it's impossible for people.
Pretty much.
But
At
the
certain
jobs they
income,
have
at
might
certain,
have healthcare too, right?
excuse me.
The jobs they have may very well have healthcare, so.
Well, I mean,
If you're a part-timer, you're not going to have health
a
care.
third of the jobs in Rhinebeck are part-time, and
And-
two-thirds, not all of them have benefits.
And many millennials now are picking up something called gig work, GIG, which means they're working 2, 3, 4 part-time jobs. Not any one of them will give benefits, pension, anything like that. So that all comes out of pocket.
It's dire.
So the ugly picture that we're painting here is there's a drastic need for affordable housing for both renters and homeowners. Homeowners, that's something that a lot of people can strive for. And, I tell my son, he's 22, I tell my son, I said, look, if you want a house someday, you better start saving. Well, I started to tell him that when he was 3 years old. He's going to graduate from college next year, no student debt, because he's worked along and paid it off. So it's how you perceive affordability as well.
Of the overall budget of an average person, what is the, of the average person that's struggling here, what part does the housing represent?
On
Is it
average?
28% or is it 50%?
Oh, I may not have that calculation in hand, but I can get you that answer for sure. All right, let's see, where are we? Tri-County Housing Needs Assessment. So back in 2006, Ulster County, Orange County, and Dutchess County all got together, and they said, we need a housing assessment, needs assessment. 3 counties, Tri-County. And they looked at homeownership, and they looked at rental. The study took a very long time. It took about 3 years, which it started in the height of the market, and it ended after the crash of the market. So just keep that in mind. The last numbers that they prepared in '09 after the crash are on this chart. And you can see that just in the town of Rhinebeck, the projection by 2020 was that there was going to be a need for 158 additional homeownership units that are affordable, and for rentals, 104. That's just town of Rhinebeck. When you add in Red Hook and Hyde Park, now you're looking at 528 units of projected
This is from
need.
2006?
That's the projections.
From
were
2006 to 2020?
2020.
But we've done that, even with just building in the woods, the gardens, we've achieved this number almost.
You've built 158 affordable units?
Affordable, no. Not just units, yeah. No,
My
affordable.
understanding, that was the set aside?
There's set aside, the set aside
It's about two.
wasn't utilized.
No, there were three that was...
And there's a lot of issues with that on the homeownership side, which is another whole discussion. So,
I don't understand what's driving the need, I mean, our population isn't going up.
but the people that are here, again, their wages are not keeping up with inflation. No new units are coming onto the market. And so and you also have to realize that household formation has also slowed down. Millennials are not having kids. One and done, if any at all, if they stay around.
And we have an older population here, so
You
there's
do.
retirement and...
It's our fastest growing demographic.
And a tight housing market, again, it's under 5%. Doesn't move
How's the
much.
fact that your millennials are not having children play into the 28% factor? My kids cost me a fortune.
Mine was $383,000.
Dumps into my kids for summer camp, I'm ready to go take another mortgage out of my house. So millennials don't have kids, so the layman would say they can afford more than 28% of their...
They don't have kids, but they have a couple of other things. You ever see a millennial walk around?
Yeah,
What do they hold?
What does that cost them?
What does it cost?
$500 a month.
500 a month for
You buy it, you pay for it.
No,
It's
it
gonna be anywhere
doesn't.
from $100 up.
So,
No.
but if they're walking into
Can
one of
we-
the restaurants, they don't need a car.
Should I be allowing this?
A lot of them don't have cars.
You're absolutely right. The trend is that millennials want to live in an urban center, no car
I say
insurance.
this only because one
You know,
of the
I'd like
problems we have,
to,
we're
Richard,
millennials.
we're not going to keep discussing from the audience. This is a presentation for the town board, and we're here to listen.
Okay, Elizabeth.
Thank you.
Percentage of our population.
Sorry?
I didn't know.
Yeah.
Okay. So, all said and done, at the end of the day, if you turn to option one, I think you'll see my notes, 40 to 60 units of affordable workforce housing with income streams that are at 50%, 60%, and 90% of area median income is what's needed in the town and village. I think you could fill that, and hold it completely filled for a very long time. And I think that in conversations with the state, the Office of Homes and Community Renewal would absolutely entertain an application for housing of that size. Option two would be to do what's called a mixed income approach within a market rate development. A mix of units. There could be a set aside for perhaps families earning at 30% or 40%. And essentially what
Who's going to
happens-
do this? Who's going to?
There's affordable housing developers out there that do this all the time. They're very good at it. They not only build a high-quality apartment and complex, but they have really good management as well. And option three is something that's a little bit different. A lot of the, what they're calling luxury apartments, which to me is the old garden-style apartments, the design of those is now really set up for a shared living experience where you've got 2 bedrooms on either side of essentially a box, and then on the interior you have a kitchen, a living room, a laundry, and typically 2 bathrooms.
Shared living for
Shared
two unrelated people?
They can be unrelated.
Wow.
It's like a dormitory. In college.
Well, it's only 2 people.
But it's only 2 people, and they're also pretty large. There's one down in the town of Newburgh, for example. The 2-bedroom there is about 1,400 square feet. Not bad size.
That is big size. That's big size when you're talking about affordable.
And so that's really all the highlights from the study. And I guess we can go on to questions, or what have you?
I think it was pretty thorough. It's pretty, shows the pressing need for affordable housing and what we already know, that we have a really fast aging, growing aging population. People are coming here to retire. They want to age in place. and we're not meeting the demand.
Right, and so one of the other recommendations that I put within the report is something called an ancillary apartment, which helps the population that are aging in place. And there are other things like eco cottages, which are small cottages put on, on sort of the backyard of a large lot, and they can connect to the sewer system, and water system. There's lots of, I think, very creative ways to deal with it, but when you get down to the brass tacks of the rentals, you really need a complex to handle the number of families that are in need.
54, currently.
Currently, if you look just at that number. Now, when you go out, eventually you have a piece of land, the developer comes in, they're interested in doing these types of projects, they're going to have to conduct something called a market study. And the market study is very, very specific study conducted specifically for the housing development itself, the number of bedrooms that the developer is planning on building, the costs, and what the catchment area is, the lease-up rate. There's a whole lot of information that goes into it. This isn't a market study, it's an assessment. So
Sure.
you have to understand there's a little bit of a difference.
We should, it's a 100-page presentation, the original one, right?
Yeah.
We should get it on our website.
I think it might be, I'm not sure, you'd have to ask John. It was given to
I can't hear a
the town
thing.
board. He may have put
Could
it
you
on.
talk in the mic? I can't, I'm
I'm sorry,
having trouble
it may
hearing
be on the
anything.
website, I don't know. You have to check. It was given to the town board in December.
Does anybody here have any questions or comments? It's pretty grim.
That's depressing.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thanks for
Thank you very
coming.
much. If you do have any questions that you think of later, just send me an email. Can't forget.
Thanks.
I have a quick question, if it's okay.
He has a question.
Yep. Shoot,
Thank you.
I'm listening. Pardon me.
You had said at first that we need 128 units for ownership and 120 for rental, and then you said drop it down to 50-something. What was the criteria for?
For saying that we should only build 40 to 60?
Yeah.
It's really a matter of, it's a matter of density, and it's a matter of keeping the consistency of what is here in the town and the village. So if you build a 100-unit complex, it's going to look, it's going to feel and look a little bit out of place. And I also think that you should build a complex that can get leased up and stay leased up. Because the moment that your population, your demographics shift, and if the property can't stay leased up, their cash flow drops. What happens when cash flow drops? Management and maintenance suffer. And that's the last thing that you want.
So what size is the average complex that you're talking about? Are we talking about 1 or 2 complexes in the area, 4 or 5, or just a single?
There's a lot of different designs. Many builders, affordable housing developers, put up 2 buildings, maybe 30 units in each, 28 units in each, something like that. Some builders will do 50 units in a single building. That's probably not going to happen, because then you're talking about potentially going to 3 stories, you're talking about different kinds of fire suppressant, and things of that nature. And it also depends on the availability of water, sewer, the size of the lot, what are the parking requirements, and if you're thinking about parking requirements, and I apologize if I'm going on, but if you're thinking about parking requirements, and I don't know what yours are, but a lot of communities will say, we need 2.5 lot, spaces per apartment. And if you drive in there, no matter what time of day, it's half empty. And there's a sea of asphalt that just sits there. Somebody's got to pay taxes on it, somebody's got to maintain it, somebody's got to plow it, so on and so forth. So I did a parking study a while back, and I think it was on average 1.2.
If there's walkability,
There is, but not everybody can just walk to services and employment. Some of them walk.
Thank you.
And these people who do these developments, I mean, you say we build the houses for that price, but what about land prices in this area? How do they compare with the average of what they're doing with this is a pricey area?
It is pricey, but they build these in Westchester all the time. The land prices are a lot higher, in Rockland County, a lot higher, in Beacon, they're actually quite a bit higher.
Fairfield County, Connecticut.
And we have, 5 acre zoning, so can you do it on 5 acres?
Well, the state doesn't want to see a 5-acre lot with just a little tiny piece of it. So a lot of times what happens, a little tiny piece develops, so a lot of times what happens is a developer will buy it and dedicate a part of it back to the town or to the village as open space and parkland.
Eric, your question kind of leads into what I was...
The affordable housing law, yeah.
Going to say, that under this proposed law, construction of affordable housing is mandated in the Village Gateway area. And that's the area where you have sewer and water, which developers say they need to do a project.
How much capacity is left in our village sewer system, though? Is there a lot of room?
I believe so, but it can be expanded.
I think you're still operating 20 or 30% below what they'd like you to be actually to get a good return on that.
So I don't know if the planning board understood that there are the Village Gateway where construction is mandated when they did their comments.
I did not, I guess my question is, how do you attract
Developers?
developers to come?
Well, but Richard, that's beyond his...
Where is the Village Gateway?
This is an assessment, yeah, they did an assessment for it, so...
Outskirts of the village where they still have the water lines.
So you answered the
It's
question.
South of the town to the north
You would
of
issue an RFP.
the village.
Yeah.
But anyway, I also wanted, I didn't make enough copies, I apologize, but in anticipation of local laws, I put 5 together of some local laws in and around the Hudson Valley. I only have 3 copies, I apologize.
I think we have enough laws floating around.
Where,
But these are just some incentive.
I just was interested in seeing what
They are density bonus laws, because when if you look at 5 acre, you can't put 1 unit on it, you need density.
but we don't have the density here anyway. Like, a density bonus isn't going to attract density. We just don't have to develop it. This is Bedford, town of Bedford. These are much more, these are bedroom communities. We're not that community.
There's a whole bunch of different ones in there.
Goshen,
Our zoning restrictions prohibit this. That's it.
If your zoning
Fishkill.
prohibits it, you gotta
Change your zoning.
You gotta change your zoning.
There you go.
It's a fair housing issue,
yeah.
which is another whole world. I'm not really-
Thank you for,
Thank you for avoiding that.
Project, and I can recommend some folks that you can talk to, but I hope that answers your questions. Again, if you do have more questions, please send them in.
I see what he
I
gave.
appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Very nice job, thank you.
Well, it's sobering. We've got to... how do you want to handle the next part? We have, I think, 6 major areas of concern. 6 major areas of concern, so, no?
Well, these are 6 areas that I distilled from...
Do you have a
various-
list of everything that the
comments.
planning board? Okay, you
Well,
just,
it's in their draft, or their...
I just didn't know, all right, I have,
the report. Let me say that with respect to specific sections, and there were a number of pages that were...
is Jonathan doing this, or are you doing this? Do we have the chairs here? Who's presenting?
I can stand up.
Yeah, if you,
Right, but,
Jonathan's the chair of the committee, let's...
okay, well, I just...
Yeah,
Oh, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I'm just going to be here to...
The issues they raise, that will be in the draft specific language.
All right.
That's what I'm trying to say.
Okay.
You're on, Bill.
But all I was trying to say is, with respect to specific comments that the planning board made section by section, Warren and I and Jonathan and the committee have talked about those, and there will be another version coming out meeting those specific language suggestions. So we try to distill major issues. That's...
Yeah, and I think probably the first one, just to address this a little bit, and Joe, feel free to jump in also. One of the things that we're proposing, the big question that came up is, how do you attract a developer, right? If there's a clear need for a project like this, how do you get a developer interested in pursuing it? And one of the things that we're setting out to do is to create a fee structure that provides a kitty to help finance what some of the costs of that project could be. Most of the funding comes from the state level. That's just sort of true across the board.
It'll have to, because we don't have this kind of building.
Yeah, we don't have this kind of building, and there's also there's only one high-density area in town. And Joe, the point really is that you need to have significant density to make a project like this work. I mean, this is, apartment buildings, a couple of stories, and the only place, well, there is density right now that's anything close to that is the Village Gateway. And one of the things that we're mandating is that 10% of the units built in the Village Gateway be affordable housing units. One of the other things that we are working on as a committee is trying to identify sites that could accommodate a development like this that also meet certain attributes, things like walkability to the village, access to water and sewer. And in that context, if we can identify suitable locations, then attract a developer to take on the project, because the developer is the one that's going to be seeking the state funding. The developer is the one that's going to oversee construction. The developer is the one that's going to manage the project. But these things are not easy.
So what do we have to offer the developer? We have to offer the developer...
Well, one of the things that's important to offer is if there's a way to actually sort of pre-vet a site, then somebody's coming... These are very
Shovel-ready.
controversial. And it's that somebody isn't going to want to come into something and then have a long, drawn-out fight
Front
with the
end.
town as to whether or not it's permissible. And that happens even in the context, in a lot of places, of doing it according to the underlying density. Coming into a higher density area and proposing a workforce housing development, and then still having it turn into a community fight. But in this context, it would be very helpful to have it clear that potentially a particular location has already been vetted by the town, and the town is behind it. The other thing that we're proposing, and this is where these fees really do become important, even if they're not huge fees, and we can talk about the fee structure, but the idea of having some money available to help sort of round out the edges of what the financing package looks like is important. It can also help to, even if it's, well, right now we have a little bit of money left over from the Gardens contribution, about $300,000, but $40,000 matters. And one of the things that Joe was pointing, and Joe can speak to this too.
I was going to say, if the town, if the municipality can put up real cash into the deal, that is going to speak volumes at the state level, because you got to remember, these dollars that the developers are going for are competitive. The Hudson Valley has not received its fair share, if you will, from the state on affordable housing. The state, I know the Eastern Director of the office very, very well. He and I spend a lot of time together, and they want to put more investment in the Hudson Valley, especially in the areas that are of higher income or that are perceived to have higher income.
Yeah, and when we've met with state officials, people that administer some of these programs, and the initial reaction was positive towards doing a project in Rhinebeck, but it's a competitive process, and having demonstrated town commitment, even if it's a very small percentage of what the overall project budget is, that goes a long way to showing that the town commitment's there, and that the town is helping to support the project, and the state officials then that make those decisions look on that favorably. And there's also, things like, could we help bridge a gap in the water and sewer cost if it's not available on a particular location? Could we help potentially finance some piece of the upfront costs. A lot of things like the feasibility study, a lot of the sort of pre-planning that goes into, the thought process before an application's even submitted to the planning board. Those things, there's a cost around that. And
So this
if we can help
affordable
contribute-
housing law is a step towards
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. That's the thought
Making
process
it
behind it. And
attractive.
yeah, and a problem is that when we originally looked at it, a lot of things that include sort of mandated, percentages of affordable housing as part of new developments, those are in much higher density areas. And we're mandating that in the only high density area in town, but when you get to 5, 10, and 20 acre zoning, the cost to build is so expensive that it just, you can't go there. So our reaction to that was, let's create a fee structure that can help promote a higher density development in a place in town where hopefully the town's going to look to see it and look very positively on it.
When these developments are constructed, put together, it's something called lasagna financing. You'll see any one of these deals that has 8, 9, 10 different sources of money coming in. What the state likes to see in this competitive world is the municipality has skin in the game. So if you've got a law, if you've got a site, if you've got a developer that you've gone through an RFP process with, if you've got actual cash available to the developer.
Zoning that,
for project shovel-ready, skin in the game, the state won't say no. They really won't. And if you want to do this, I would highly recommend getting it done as soon as possible, because at the national level, affordable housing,
not a priority.
it's not looking good.
No, it's not.
I'll get off my soapbox.
Thanks.
It is what it is.
Well, can I just ask a question? When you talk about putting things in place, but things are just things they're not really housing. It's just the things that lead to housing.
Right.
But they don't
That's the point.
necessarily lead to housing.
Oh, everything you're talking about?
No, all the things you talk about didn't necessarily lead to housing. They just were the little steps that show that, okay, you jumped to this, but there's no housing in place after it's all said and done.
If you set up your law, you set up.
Eric, it's part of paving the way. This is the work that has to be done to get there. We need an affordable housing study.
Structure.
We need to pass the correct laws in our zoning to allow it. This is what you do to get there. This is part of the planning
Right.
process.
And the most critical being, the town needs to embrace this and give a couple spots, designate a couple spots, which may not be very popular, but if we truly want to do this, and if I'm not mistaken, we're pushing forward on this because it's part of our comp plan. We could change the comp plan and alleviate all the stress, but if we're going.
I don't agree with that. I don't agree with that. We cannot change the comp plan.
The town has
We'll get sued.
to embrace it fully and come up with some viable sites to attract people to come here.
Yeah.
And I say that, and I apologize because I have to leave and go to karate.
Okay, and developers are interested. There are a handful of developers in
Well-
this area that this is what they do.
We need this for the population that we have and for the population that we're going to have in 10 more years.
There was a affordable housing complex started in the town of Woodstock by an organization across the river. by
The
name of
RUPA. What is it?
12 years to build.
I'm sorry, what is it?
12 years.
Go.
That's RUPCO. That, our planner was involved with that.
Yeah.
That's correct.
Art Broad.
There's a
RUPCO.
really-
And that was done at the, I think that was done at the available density at the time. So that didn't require any town, increase in density. That was a high-density area in Woodstock. It was still very controversial. That was one of the things I was thinking of when I said that. Even, Woodstock, you'd think might have a mindset that was positive towards something like that, but a lot of people weren't. So it finally got built, but it was a fight.
There's,
We've been talking about this for years. Nobody has really come out against this. I think our town is for this.
Yeah, well, a lot of times it wouldn't.
Well, we don't know until you really look.
We had the public hearings.
Public with the site. and
Yeah, that's one,
decide
that's,
whether
in the abstract, it's easy to support something when it pops up
Sorry?
next door. I said in the abstract, it's easy for people to support something when it pops up next door. That's when the problems start.
And I think that's why we talked about a number that is reasonable in scope, 40 to 60 units. It doesn't frighten people as much as if you come in and say 150 units.
It's the same,
Are you asking us to decide anything tonight? Are you
Yes,
asking us?
I'm asking you to decide what the fees should be, whether we want to favor town residents. It's these 5 issues.
I mean,
That's
I
what I
have
want
my
you to
notes. Do
decide.
you want to go through it, or do you?
Yeah, I think we should. Jonathan, can you take us?
One more comment. One of the samples that I gave you for local law was a preference for local employees.
Okay. We have, it's one of the issues. Jonathan, can
We
you
already
take us
have
through
that.
the issues?
Did you read, you read our own zoning law? We have an affordable provision, affordable housing provision, pretty extensive in our zoning law, which mirrors most of these.
I read it in
Okay.
September of last year.
Okay.
And I probably.
You haven't committed it to memory?
And I just want to remind you that this is not something that we decided to do as part of the comprehensive plan and the zoning law, serendipitous. This is required by law. I mean, there's a series of court cases in New York State which require that municipalities, especially when they're redoing their comprehensive plan and zoning law and we're providing for larger acre zoning, must have these provisions in their zoning law. Otherwise, the
It's
laws will be straightened
exclusionary,
down.
Which is why I disagreed with Richard. We can't.
Well, I don't, let me finish my thought. So it's not a matter of, whether the town citizens will buy it or not. It's in the zoning law, it's in our comprehensive plan. We're now really talking about making some changes and additional rules and regulations and laws to implement that. But we've already defended a lawsuit based upon our affordable housing plan that's included in our comprehensive plan and zoning law. So it's not a matter of just going back and changing our comprehensive plan or deciding we don't want affordable housing in the town. We have to have it. This is required by law.
So I guess,
Thanks for that reminder, yeah.
so when,
And there's
yeah,
that. There's that.
And there's that too.
state law or federal law?
Pardon? Decisional law.
Pardon?
Decisional law. Cases, decisional
Case
law,
law.
these are cases, these are lawsuits that have been...
We changed our zoning
The
here,
most
we
famous is
upzoned
Barronson
everyone.
versus the
So
town of Newcastle.
to
And
compensate
there's
for
a,
that, we need to not
there's
be
a whole series of
exclusionary and have
cases.
affordable housing.
So the town, when we passed our zoning law and comprehensive plan, we anticipated we would get a lawsuit on this basis, and that's why, one of the reasons why we created this zoning law, the affordable housing plan as part of the zoning law, anticipating that the law might be challenged on this basis. And it was found to be defensible. So it's not about, we're not backtracking on this, we're adding to and making better what we already have in our zoning law and our comprehensive plan.
Well, Ward, just a comment, isn't it true that one of the judges in at least one of those suits acknowledged that the affordable housing law we passed at the time of the comprehensive plan of the new zoning was skeletal but needed to be filled out, and he assumed we were going to make that effort as follow-on when he made his decision?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't describe the law as skeletal. The law had certain, it's fairly comprehensive, the law in our zoning, the affordable housing provisions in our zoning law, but the law itself required that there would be additional laws, rules, and regulations which the town would have to pass to fully implement the law. So before we could actually say that we have an affordable housing plan, what's been done, and as part of the effort of the Affordable Housing Committee, is that mandate under the original zoning law. So, not skeletal, but skeletal.
I don't
Skeletal.
want the public to think that it was sufficient, because at the time we passed the law, we all agreed that it was not sufficient. While it was a good first step, it was not sufficient to implement what we're now trying to do. We all acknowledged at the time we signed off on the comp plan that that law needed more work, as did the court.
Well, it's not just a matter that need more work. It's specifically, if you read the law, it says the town shall do X, it shall do Y, it shall do Z. There are certain things that are specifically stated in the law that the town would have to do and complete before we had an affordable housing plan that we could then charge to developers. So it's not a matter of that we needed more work. We anticipated that these things would have to be done before the law would really become effective in terms of requiring affordable housing from developers in the town.
So it's been 7 years, and it'll be another 7 years unless we let Jonathan go down this list. But I think we need decisions from the
We didn't
town
anticipate it would
board.
take that long.
Yeah, good, good. And these really were just pointing out some, both in the county level, the planning board level, and then a couple of the committee members, a couple of the planning board members had individually submitted some comments. So we wanted to just, Joe put this together as a way to just say, here's 6 things that, we had proposed one thing, some questions were raised, and hopefully at the end of tonight, we can just make a decision on what the right approach is on each of these, or in very short order, if not tonight, and then we can refine the draft, and what we're hoping as a committee is that we can then get this passed. And we'll continue to work on it after this, and there's some other things that we're in the process of working on, but this is an important first step. So the first one really has to do with the fee structure. We had been advised to be sort of cautious out of the gates in terms of how much we were charging as fees. So the fees that we proposed were relatively modest, which was for development of 10 or more units only. So only if somebody was doing a larger development, that there would be a base fee of 25 cents a foot for each of those units. So if there's 10 units of 4,000 square feet each, to use Joe's math, that's 40,000 square feet in total. Using the 25 cents, that's $10,000. The next piece to this is there's a density bonus that's associated with it for a higher fee. So a developer that was building 10 houses could build up to an additional, well, it's 1.5, but gets rounded up. So if you were building 10, you could build up to 12, paying another $5 a square foot for the extra houses. That was something that we put out. Maybe that is light.
So,
but we can, that's something that we'll
you want us
certainly
to talk about this on a point-by-point basis?
Yeah, what I'm thinking we can do is hopefully go through this, and if we're not making decisions tonight, then hopefully we can get some guidance at the
So
very least.
Art Brode,
Let's make decisions.
Art Brode wrote to me and said that he couldn't make the meeting because it was scheduled too early for him, and he wrote just a couple of points. One is, should the town board wish to proceed in the interim with the seed money local law to nurture an affordable rental price, none unlike Repco development in Woodstock, for which I was project planner, et cetera, the square footage fee should be raised to a minimum of $1 a square foot. I think the fees are too low. I'd like to see it at $1 and $10 for density bonus. And that's just based on research that I've done and talking to other people, planners, and
Was there a standard that you went by when you picked the 25 cents?
Well, what we were doing, originally when we proposed this, and this is, we'll be upfront about this, originally when we proposed it, we were proposing that it be applied to every new house that was built in town. We were somewhat worried that there would be some public backlash if the fee were high, because, it applies across the board. We haven't seen a lot of developments of 10 or more units at this point. Part of this is just to create a framework to, if it does happen, there is going to be a benefit to the town that's a part of it. So it wasn't overly scientific. I'm not sure what.
That's part of the problem. I mean, it comes down to, okay,
Eric, could you try, town board has to meet in public. We have to have a public meeting to work, and, thanks.
So, I mean, I think, we talked about potentially, increasing the fees somewhat. I mean, I don't know what the...
I would be in favor of increasing them. I don't know what you guys...
And we did talk about $1, and we talked about 50 cents, and we were all over the place trying to,
Maybe we should go around.
It's a tough, one of the things to be aware of, just to sort of put some context in it, and this is part of the reason that there was some modesty on the fees, is that right now, when you look especially in the 5, 10, and 20 acre district, it's really expensive to build a house. It's actually more expensive to build a house than you can sell a house for. So the idea of then tacking on a bunch of additional fees to somebody that's, it doesn't make sense anyway.
Well, it's kind of luxury housing, though.
What's that?
It's luxury we're taxing luxury housing to help with affordable housing.
But the problem is that there's not enough demand for luxury housing.
But there could be.
But that's what we're saying. In the
Yeah.
future, if it does make sense, that's really more like we're looking forward on this thing. I'd like to have, or we as a committee would like to have something in place, but we didn't want to go bananas on the fee
Yeah, no,
structure
I get
because
it.
right now it's sort of like, we're talking about nobody's doing it anyway because it costs more to build it than you can sell it for. So it's somewhat limited. I'm making that point just as something to be aware of when we're looking at it. So there's not like people are building it for $500,000 and going and selling tons of them for $700,000 and making, they're not doing it because it doesn't make any sense to do it to begin with. So now we're talking about a fee structure on top of that. So that's our point of just in terms of there's not like a huge profit there that we feel like we're in a position to take advantage
The
of.
building permit fee is 35 cents a foot, so it seems like 25 is way too low, it seems like.
Do you-
Yeah,
Does
there's
any-
also a rec fee. I mean, all these things add to the cost.
So
of
Art
housing.
Broad
So-
is saying $1. Does anybody have any,
He's saying what?
$1 at least, to make it meaningful?
He also said
For 10, didn't he, in what you read?
No, I said the 10 based on
Oh,
talking to him
sorry.
and talking, I mean, selling a density bonus, there should be some major benefit for, I believe, an affordable housing project, so. We can either leave it placeholder or change it.
Yeah, just remember that you're starting off with a set fee, but the law anticipates that each year you will have the ability to amend that fee through resolution. You don't have to go through the local law. So if it starts out and it's too low, you can always raise it. If it's too high, you can always lower it. But you don't want to make it prohibitive where we don't get any development and we don't get any monies contributed to our trust fund, which is very important.
Yeah, and admittedly, we were starting out at the point of being modest with the idea that if we actually saw a development happen, then we could see what they were selling for, we could get a better sense of how it worked. But, I mean, maybe on that one, is it, I don't know.
Well, why don't we...
Should we?
Chauncey, do you have any, do you have any feeling?
I don't really have a way to
Gauge it.
pick a number except from what I hear from you and Art.
What range did you
committee.
consider in the committee? What was the
Ed,
range?
hold on, Warren, do you have any feeling about it?
Well, I think it can be adjusted, so if you start at 25 cents, you can always move it, as Warren said, by a year.
Joe, what do
If
you
need
think?
to.
I could go with $1 and
Yeah.
$10.
I'm fine with $1.
And $10?
$10 for the...
$1 and $10? There, $1 and $10.
Sold.
Next.
Look, this one is kind of a legal issue, Elizabeth, so maybe I could
Sure.
give a little introduction to
Go ahead,
it.
go nuts.
The issue is whether we should favor people who work in the town or town residents. I looked at our senior citizens floating district, and that does have a preference for existing residents of Rhinebeck get the first preference, and second preference is residents of Dutchess County, and then all others are that second preference. So we do have some precedent for preferences to local people who work here, and the draft has a more elaborate structure of preferences. It's on page 13 of the draft. And the question is, do we want a preference for people who live and work in Rhinebeck, and how elaborate a preference if we want it? There's always a legal risk whenever you have anything, I think, in this world. Even a lottery system, somebody can argue that it's discriminatory because you haven't advertised the lottery. Conceivably, someday, there could be a case somewhere challenging a preference.
Preference has been upheld by the courts.
Right.
Preference for what, Sally?
For having a preference for their local residents and then going to the county and then going outside of the county. And within that, to talk about, having it more elaborate in terms of who would qualify and develop a point system. And basically, it shows that there is a preference for firemen or school teachers and really looking at members of the community that contribute. This is a way of paying back and accommodating an important need for the people that live there and within the community. And it has been upheld by the courts.
Can I address that?
Yeah.
First of all, it's included in our comprehensive plan. It's required in our comprehensive plan. And I noticed, I just read and it's pretty standard that most of these laws have a preference, and each one of the ones that you gave me has a preference in these municipalities similar to our preference list.
The town of Goshen handout specifically has a point system, and it's very clear.
And so does the town of Bedford, and,
So what's the question?
Do we stay?
Are we okay with
The
it?
question is, do we stay with preference, and do we want this preference, or do we want a simpler preference? So 2 questions. Do we want a preference for people who live or work in Rhinebeck?
Yes.
Well, the only thing is that
Okay, then the second is...
well, I don't think we all answered that. Is that,
Well, I heard 2 people.
okay, so
So that's 3.
the other side of it is it racially exclusive? We're a very non-mixed community. Does that restrict any people from outside of Rhinebeck coming in? I mean, I'm just worried that should it be broader? Should we be having people, countywide people, or it's state funding too, so.
Well, we also, we do include the local workforce as a priority. So it's people that, it's not just people that live in Rhinebeck, but it's also people that work in
This
Rhinebeck.
isn't so restrictive.
No, it's not. We were not trying to be overly restricted with it. It was,
Yes. Poll the rest.
Do we want to stay with what's proposed here?
I do.
I do. I do.
Okay, so we do. Check.
Okay, what's next?
Sale of apartment building with affordable housing units.
yeah, and really if somebody were to build a for sale affordable housing unit, as part of a development, then we included a provision that if that person were to try to sell that house after they bought it and lived in it for a period of time, they would have to sell it as part of the affordable housing program. So there would be a cap on what it could get sold for, essentially. But if somebody were unable to sell it for, I think it's 9 months, that they would be able to sell it as a market rate. They could just sell it. It wouldn't have that prohibition on it, with the idea that somebody can't be trapped in a house that they simply can't sell. But we wanted to make sure that there was enough time and place for that to happen. For apartment buildings, which are multi-unit, which would have, say, one affordable housing unit and 9 market rate units if it's 10 units, we said that needs to be sold with that affordable housing unit as an affordable housing unit in perpetuity. It would affect the cash flow a little bit of the property, meaning that they get less rent for that 1 unit, but that just would be reflected in the purchase price. So our feeling is that there's no reason to have that ability to sort of get out of the sale. And it seemed right for somebody to say, oh, well, I'm having a hard time selling it now after 9 months, and if I got rid of this apartment, it'd be easier. But that seems like it's ripe for abuse. So we did not include that. There was a recommendation from the planning board that there is also that ability to sell it and get out of that obligation. We, I think, stand by the idea that it should be sold as is.
Yeah, I think so too.
Makes sense to me.
I just,
Whereas you don't want to lose, you work hard to.
Yeah.
no, to develop it, you don't want to, no, and I mean, 9 months
Yeah.
doesn't even seem that long. It takes longer to sell a house here sometimes.
Yeah.
But
And this next one, I'm not sure that we have.
So was there a decision on
okay.
that?
Yeah. Leave it as is.
Agreed.
Agreed.
numero 5.
Yes, numero 4. At least halfway, we're halfway.
This is not engineering talk.
This next one is that one of the Ann Saylor from the county's recommendations is that for the Affordable Housing Trust Fund that's being funded by the fee structure and the money that we have from the gardens, that a percentage limit be placed on how much can be used for the implementation, administration, enforcement, and legal and consulting fees around the affordable housing program. And I think the reason for that is there have been some instances where towns have sort of rated that fund, sort of saying, oh, well, they're having financial problems. Oh, a large portion of this person's salary should be paid for out of the affordable housing fund. Becomes like a slush fund.
We don't operate like that. We're
I don't. And everything, the way this is all set up, the town board would need to approve all expenditures that are associated with it. As a committee, we would, if we have any thoughts as to how that fund would be used, we come to the town board and we ask permission.
I mean, if there were more restrictions that you wanted to place on it to ensure that it wasn't rated, I'd be for that. But, I mean,
yeah, this is a
I don't
smaller
like a
town.
limiting percentage.
And I think as a committee, I can say that if we saw a situation where all of a sudden our trust fund was going down, we would certainly raise that as an issue. As is, I don't.
We don't take it. We don't. The only thing that comes out of that fund are the expenses that you're using to develop this.
Yeah.
I mean, no one on the staff gets charged against it.
Yeah.
It's your consultant fees, and that's it.
Yeah. Yeah. So we were comfortable as is, and as I said, if it seemed like
Guys, you all right with that?
Yeah.
Good. Next.
Now this one is a little bit nebulous. The comment was that there was not a specific plan for development, and really, when these projects come to fruition, they come to fruition in a variety of different ways, and it really is based on the specific site, what that site can have as capacity, what state funds are available. I mean, there's a little bit of a flavor of the month thing with that, where at certain points, certain types of developments are favored, other types, 100% affordable housing units at these income levels, maybe it can be a mixed rate that gets funded through a different. So it all depends on how that comes together. And I mean, our plan in a big picture sense, which really wouldn't be part of the law, is to try to help facilitate the creation of these projects. So I'm not sure exactly what this means.
So I don't either, because the market's going to drive it, and individual developers, and a zoning law that allows for it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
You guys?
Yes.
Yeah.
Good.
All right, and then the last one was, and this was really a proposal that came out of, I think, two of the planning board members, not so much the planning board as a whole, but the idea that there be some sort of a floating zone put into place.
I missed that, I'm sorry.
Some sort of a floating zone being put into place, which would allow for a density that was actually about the same as the village gateways, by first permission of the planning board and then review. By the town board and then review by the planning board, with some flexibility in terms of you could increase potentially density depending on where it was located and what the attributes were. Something like that we think might have some merit. I think we really need to take a look at it in the context, though, and this is the important distinction in our minds. Just passing a law like that and then saying a developer is going to come isn't a recipe for actually creating an affordable housing project. It really, in some ways, creates almost a double threshold in the sense that first that developer needs to go in front of the town board and probably have a lot of public hearings and a lot of requests for information, a lot of upfront costs and money before they even get to the planning board. We, I think, are considering something that would help facilitate a project even, and maybe it's written more broadly than this, but the idea behind it would be to help facilitate a project that was sort of pre-vetted, and that we would really be in the process of trying to identify a site and to then, as Joe was pointing out, work through an RFP process to identify a good developer so that a project was happening in a place that I think people would agree was as good a location as possible with a developer with a really good reputation.
So you're okay with a floating zone?
We're okay. What we want to do is, this doesn't need to be part of this law. The idea that this law creates a certain set of goals, which is
zoning law would be an additional
so
zoning law.
a floating zone would be an addition
But isn't
to
it a floating zone? Doesn't it just create so many problems on the front end? Because it
As a standalone, yes.
Doesn't it become like NIMBY? you know?
Yeah, I mean, and that Joe's pointed that out.
What, is it, yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
I would rather have,
Get very nervous.
yeah, I would rather not, I mean, just knee-jerk reaction, I would
Yeah.
rather not have a floating zone, I would rather have zones where
Zoned,
it
right.
would zone for it.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that we're looking at, is what's the, now, I mean,
I
because
mean,
it
we're
becomes.
mandating it in the Village Gateway.
Yeah, we're mandating 10% in the Village Gateway, and one of the things that we want to do is then come back and say, okay, to facilitate, if we're successful in identifying a site and securing a developer, at the same time we're doing that, what's the process then through which this type of project would become approved? And putting some kind of a framework in place for that to happen is something that we definitely are going to be looking at. What the best approach for that is something that we're in the process of studying. Whether it's a floating zone, whether it's a dedicated area of the town that would be the right area for something like this. Either, that's something that we're looking at. But what we didn't agree with was the idea that a floating zone was an alternative to that approach, because as a standalone, it really becomes
Too
almost
many
like
problems.
too many problems, and it's sort of almost double jeopardy. So it's
agree.
not the standalone
It
answer.
seems to sort of stop it rather than,
Yeah, I mean, we could
encourage
pass it, we could pass a floating zone, and a very unlikely developer ever shows up and tries to take advantage of it.
Well,
So-
I think the other thing is, if you don't say where it is,
Yeah.
then it's like a cloud hanging over everybody in the town.
Yeah.
And if you do say where it is and it's not in the gateway area, now we're going to have a ghetto.
Yeah.
In other words, you're going to have a high-density housing in the middle of 10-acre lots, or whatever.
Yeah.
And if you're not careful, it could be considered spot zoning.
right, right. Is everybody okay with that?
Yes, definitely.
All right, good. Check.
Hey, we made some decisions.
Well, I think where we go from here,
Is the committee's in agreement with this?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's pass this.
Now, just one other aside, we have two members of our planning board who are very dear to us, they're really great board members, who came up with a draft of a law, and the committee will meet with them and go over their draft.
Yeah, I've already
It's,
set up an
if
initial
you, okay, so
meeting.
that's fine.
Yeah,
And then
we'll go through.
and
We haven't
then-
had a chance even, that was the floating zone.
But this board is fine with this, and I think we've made the
Yeah.
decisions tonight we need to make.
Yes.
And if you would meet with the other people who have a whole other idea, and Warren, I'd like for you to do that too.
Yeah, I mean,
Yes.
I look at it, it is by no means
But you
even
know what?
close to a substitute for what we're doing now.
No, but there's consideration that I think,
Yeah, I mean, let me
just
just
can't leave it
remind you.
hanging out there.
The floating zone concept was created by whoever created it, similar to the senior housing. But the senior housing was created because there was no provision for senior housing in our zoning law. And the idea was to allow a project to happen where it's not otherwise permitted in the law pursuant to a legislative act which would create the zone. Affordable housing units are permitted. They're not restricted or prohibited throughout the town. You can't,
it's not.
it's comparing
Yeah,
apples to oranges.
and we'll get into a whole discussion
So,
on it.
but
It might be
we're-
that there's an affordable housing bonus
I think
that's
this-
more substantial that
This
helps get
board
this in
tonight has
place.
said that, we want to proceed with this, and we've given you some
Yeah,
concrete
yeah,
decisions.
good.
So now you're going to fine tune this law that's in front of us, and Warren, I'm assuming you'll work with that,
Yeah, I mean, I
and then
think we're pretty much there, but
our public hearing is open. Will we have a revised draft? Will it be laid before us at the next meeting?
at the next meeting, there will be a revised draft. Warren
And then
I
we'd have
will
to
work
schedule a
on the
public hearing.
wording we've already worked on.
So we won't be able to vote on it at the next meeting? 'cause
No, we can't.
We have to have it
Yeah,
laid
lay
down
it
before us for a week.
But Warren and I have met on the specific comments of the planning board by section, and at least he and I are in agreement on the language to implement
Joe, will you-
that, and we will make these changes.
Will you answer the planning board, or
I
how do we
wasn't-
answer them?
I wasn't planning on
Okay.
it. You have representatities here. It's
Oh, we
just-
noticed everyone, okay.
Yeah.
I can,
I have a question about that.
Pardon me?
In that case, I have a question in regard to what's been said so far, about the schedule of 25 cents a foot versus $1 a foot. That is a foot of new development of how many units, 10 units or above? How much of that development is presently planned and how much is projected for the
Zero.
next 10 years?
Right now,
Zippity-doo-dah.
So we got 0 for now and about 0 for the next 10 years, so it doesn't matter, why don't you set the fee at $100?
That's a
But
little
Eric, we don't know who's
jaded.
going to come in.
That's
you know?
jaded. This is in
It's like
place so that if
selling one
someone
pencil
comes
with
in,
$10
it's
million.
there.
All you have to sell is one, right?
Okay, thanks for nothing.
I'm just saying that it
Okay,
becomes unrealistic because you got nothing's going to go forward in the development.
To Jonathan's point, we don't anticipate we don't have that development, we don't have that density. But what if we did? Wouldn't it be silly for us not to have a law in place to capture it? I mean,
It's
we're going
also-
to have to look at
also
other ways of doing this,
required
going
of us.
after
I
state
just-
money.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's the law. We have to do it so that we're not exclusionary. But there are other ways we can get affordable housing by applying for grants from the state and doing it, which is something we're looking at.
But I mean, the idea of all new houses built, that makes some sense.
No, it's not.
because they're
It's on
building-
developments for more,
I understand, it's all developments, but if you do it on every new
Yeah.
house built, then you've got something. This
I-
way you've got nothing, it's far better, my take.
Well, what
Okay.
are you suggesting, like ancillary apartments and...
I think he's saying a fee on every house built.
Every new house.
built.
Oh, well, that was one of the plans, and our attorney advised that we could not do that. That
Well, that's not
might be
consistent with our
considered.
comprehensive plan. The comprehensive plan talks in terms of
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 developments.
10 or more developments, or 10 or more. When you start, I mean, you're talking about essentially almost a tax on new development if you're going to require, I mean, something similar to what they have in
Than a tax on new development of 10 units above, I mean, still, if you want to call it a tax, call it a tax, if you want to call it a fee, call it a fee, but
So you're proposing that we tax everybody in Rhinebeck, every family that builds one house, that they pay to support affordable housing, not a developer coming in to...
if no developers come, then what difference does it make?
Okay, we're going to move ahead, I think. Is there anything else?
I think we've
Covered it?
covered everything.
Yeah,
I'd like to say, good job. Committee,
yeah.
good job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Warren, you're comfortable with all the decisions tonight?
I'm comfortable with all the decisions, and I'm comfortable with the changes that we made to address the planning board concerns. And I think it's time for us to enact this, so we have it ready when somebody comes in next week with a proposal for...
With a developer comes in for
200
25
unit
25 units.
We're ready to go.
We're ready to go.
All right, well, it looks like there's light at the end of the tunnel. We're smelling the barn here. Committee?
Would you mind?
Make a motion to
Yeah,
adjourn.
I think I'll make
Second.
that motion.
Get with it.
Yeah,
Okay,
come on.
good night, everybody, thank you.
I think we'll find it. It's very similar to what we were...